Cocoon is... Well, actually, Cocoon is... Okay, fine. Cocoon is... I mean, I guess it's a game about shuffling giant balls around and using them to solve really cool puzzles. To be entirely honest, I find Cocoon intensely difficult to write about, because it's just so bizarre, yet pristine and refined that I'm having trouble conjuring the right words. Usually there's some flaw to latch onto, a quality that I feel compelled to talk about, a design choice that I'd love to see reflected in future games, a mechanic that I can't get out of my head, or any number of other topics to focus on. But I'm having difficulty doing so because Cocoon is perfect? But perfect in a way that all criticism, conjecture, commentary, and even compliments slide off of it. So I suppose I'll just have to verbally gesture at it wildly to try and emphasize why Cocoon is just so dang good. The most obvious element that makes Cocoon unique is its low-poly visual style, which blends simple shapes with techno-organic designs to create a distinct, otherworldly aesthetic. One common issue I have with fiction in general is that it's almost always constrained to fit a narrow scope of human plausibility. In other words, everything has to relate to human sensibilities and how we designed things in the past, or might design things in the future. Whereas for Cocoon, everything is intensely strange to the point of being almost surreal. From the machines, to the methods of transportation, to the creatures themselves, to the bizarre flesh world, and so on. Every single aspect of the game was designed for beings that are explicitly inhuman, and by that merit alone it makes it so unbelievably cool. You just can't find things that look like this in reality, or at least not in modern human society outside of fiction, and even then it's vanishingly rare for media to go this far. The story of Cocoon echoes this otherworldliness, but with even less grounding than the aesthetic design. I sincerely hope I'm pronouncing this right, and I apologize if I don't, but Jeppe Carlsen's games have always relied on show don't tell, with very little upfront information to tell players what's really going on. But Cocoon takes that even further by removing that human connection entirely, along with any major contextual clues to fully explain, well, anything at all. There are no verbose item descriptions to form a narrative from, no cryptic clues hidden in the margins, no secret NPC who finally explains how the world works. And especially no secret lore documents or audio logs to drip feed information to players as they explore. It's a story almost completely devoid of, well, storytelling. My interpretation is that it's simply a vignette, a view into another world for a brief period of time that shows the potential of what could possibly be in a universe wholly unlike our own. And well, there's tons of potential for a much greater universe, especially if you consider Cocoon's endings. I think it's perfectly acceptable to know and understand absolutely nothing about it. It's a story that you almost cannot talk about, because how can you? What is there to tell? You're a small bug person fixing an unthinkable, unknowable machine by solving puzzles. It's a story in a world that just exists as they are, and that's really cool. Speaking of, we should talk about the puzzles themselves, sort of. For the most part, the entire game is centered around carrying giant, color-coded world orbs on your back and using their unique properties to interact with the world presently around you, or going inside them to solve puzzles in the worlds within. By the end of the game, you're swapping in and out of these worlds at a relatively dizzying pace, placing other orbs inside of each other to solve recursive puzzles by combining their unique traits together. My favorite example of this was the point where I had nested 2 orbs inside of the orb I was carrying to bounce a laser off of a mirror, and then through each of them to delay the laser just long enough for me to carry the orb stack to another location to fire the laser at a switch. I actually had to walk away from the game for a few minutes just to wrap my head around the idea of what I had to do to solve that puzzle. But when I came back, I grabbed the controller and solved it. I'm not even really sure how I did either, because of just how natural and self-explanatory Cocoon is as a game. I'm not exaggerating. Due to the overall otherworldliness and the intuitiveness of the design, I perceive the game as more of a fever dream that I experienced rather than a game I played. Heck, I could play it 4 times over or more and would still have some difficulty accepting that it was me playing the game, rather than just sitting back and simply watching somebody else. This is something I've only ever experienced with semi-low stakes roguelikes after hundreds of episodes, where I could truly disassociate myself from what I was doing and engage entirely in a flow state stream of consciousness fusion of gameplay and commentary. It's absolutely wild to me there's a game that feels so natural, so intuitive, that I can reach that Zen state within the first hour and stay that way for an entire playthrough. I'm not joking, this is a statistical anomaly in game form that combines easy-to-learn mechanics, mind-bendingly obtuse puzzles, and surprisingly natural solutions in a way that never feels too easy nor too hard. In fact, it does so without ever compromising an inch of its complexity, themes, or pacing. Even in the boss fights, yes, there are boss fights, which manage to test you on your understanding of the mechanics presented in every area, while also introducing new twists to keep things fresh, are just as intuitive and satisfying to solve as regular gameplay. Admittedly, they do present the only failure state in the game, kicking you out of the boss arena when you take a hit. Oddly enough, this never once felt like a negative experience, nor was it even remotely frustrating. In fact, more often than not, I was able to immediately learn from my mistakes and use that to easily overcome the challenges that had bested me just moments before. Because rather than relying on reflexes or RPG statistics, I was winning with knowledge and understanding, and that always feels sublime. Cocoon is simply an even, smooth, and satisfying experience from start to finish, and in doing so it becomes one of the most replayable puzzle games I have ever seen. For the majority of games in this genre, once you know the solutions, there's little reason to come back for more, at least not until you've stepped away for several years and want to experience the game with fresh eyes again. But with Cocoon, its inherent flow state is so powerful and the solutions are so natural that it's much harder to spoil yourself from enjoying future playthroughs. Even if you know all the solutions, you'll likely end up cruising at a similar speed on a casual subsequent run. Not that I plan on doing so myself in the near future, even though there's apparently a game-spanning ARG puzzle that unlocks a secret ending and a ton of hidden collectibles that I'd missed along the way. But I had to highlight how nice it is to have a high-quality puzzle game that I can play again and again without losing much of the wonder that made it so good the first time. There's a quiet tragedy for games like Outer Wilds and Disco Elysium, where I truly wish I could scrub both from my brain and experience them all over again from an entirely fresh perspective. I'm sure I could enjoy both thoroughly on a second or even third playthrough, but much of the magic of both games is contained in their mysterious natures. And now that I've dispelled the mysteries, I've dispelled most of the magic too. But Cocoon will always be a weird, enigmatic, yet perfect entity that I can enjoy endlessly, while understanding precious little about it. Even if you're not much of a fan of puzzle games, Cocoon is definitely a must-play recommendation for me. There's nothing quite like it available anywhere else, and there likely won't be again until Geometric Interactive releases their next game, whatever and whenever that will be, especially because it's a fairly short game that can be beaten in an evening or two, or about a week's worth of evenings if you're committed to finding every little secret hidden away in its alien worlds. I always love it when a game leaves such an impression on me as Cocoon did, and I can say with absolute certainty that I'll be thinking about it for a long, long time. I'll probably take a while before I return for another playthrough, as I always have tons of other games to try, play, and finish, but I do look forward to diving back into Cocoon again when I have the time. Plus, there's always future titles from Jeppe Carlsen and Geometric Interactive, which I can only imagine will surprise and enthrall me just as much or even more so than Cocoon, which I'm very much looking forward to. For now, if you like this video in any way, shape, or form, leave me a like, it helps more than you know. And if you want to see more like it, then hit subscribe, or even consider checking out my Patreon, or becoming a channel member. These videos take a lot more time and effort than my usual fare, and extra support will help me justify spending more time on them. Oh, and before I go, what's a game that you've played that has really resonated with you, that you consider to be exceptionally unmissable, and why?